Good evening here on the Central Riverhawks YouTube channel. I'm Joel McCall. Alongside me is Mitch Olson. He is the head coach for the Central Riverhawks football team. Riverhawks now 6-1. They're 4-1 in the MVC after their 22-14 win over Holmen on Friday night. I have Sparta on my mind already. Coach Olson, first of all, thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate your time.
Good to be talking to you again, Joel.
Well, 22-14, the game started out perfect. 48-yard touchdown pass from Alvarado to Rude. The only bad play in that first drive was a gain of nothing on the first play. After that, 22 yards plus the pass interference play, and then 48 yards from Alvarado to Rude, 7-0. Forced a punt to Holmen. Next thing you know, Shepard runs in for 1 yard, which looked like Palma was going to get in for a touchdown. Instead, he was short a yard, and 14-0, and things were really rolling. Things looked good for the Riverhawks right away.
Yeah, I thought we had a good plan coming out on both sides of the ball. It's always nice to get some explosive plays right away. I'm sure we'll talk more about Jude later, but he just did an excellent job staying in the pocket, and that first quarter he was really awesome.
Did you guys know coming into the ball game, like, okay, people probably know that Myers either game time decision or not going to play, and by the time they saw them, he's not going to play? And you got to assume that everybody's figuring, well, Central will just run the ball more now because they don't have Henry Meyer. Did you guys kind of know that that would be the case and then wanted to really kind of counter that?
I don't think that they thought we were going to totally abandon the pass. I think Aaron had a good year last year, especially towards the end of last year. And I think everybody in the conference realizes just how good Aaron is. So, they got out of the single coverage pretty fast, and they had a safety over the top, and he's still getting open and he's still making plays. So, he's just that good of an athlete where you got to give him the ball. And sometimes you don't care how many guys are on him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dan was the one set up with him at first, and there was a big height advantage. And as you mentioned, it was 1-on-1 on the outside using that. And after the 7-0, then the next thing you know, a fumble by, well, it was an exchange. I didn't really know who to label that between. And then Holmen took advantage, used the short field, 14-7.
Yeah. It always irks you a little bit when Holmen gets the short field. Especially with them. You never want to turn the ball over down there against anybody, but especially when you're playing Holmen and they're so good at, just kind of working their way down the field. And 20 yards to them is a lot easier than it is to get 60 or 80 yards.
Yeah, exactly. I believe they had the 27 of yours on their drive to end up scoring with Barth from 10 yards out. Then the fumble by Alvarado on the next possession, which actually was a long possession, was almost 6 minutes. Your defense though came up big and forced that punt. Thought that was huge by your defense to come up and make a good stop right after another turnover.
Yeah, I think just sort of felt like time and time again, the defense was able to come out and just play really solid, and we were fortunate enough to get a stop.
Well, and then over at halftime, then Stripmatter got the interception. The offense couldn't do much with it, but then the safety, because of the great punt, Alvarado having to kick into the wind, gets the perfect roll, which I don't know if he planned that, but he got it. And then Holmen ended up having it at the 9-yard line and really did nothing with it. And the bad snap. That punt, though, you guys were working against that wind in the third quarter. He probably knew it was going to be tough sledding to try to move the ball through the air in that particular quarter. And Jude hit a great punt to keep it low. And I guarantee that was planned, correct?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And you
got it all the time. Like those low line drives that just roll,
Well, right. And it worked out. And Alvarado to Connor. Growth ended up 35-yard touchdown pass. We felt so good for him in the press box because I know he dropped one earlier that probably would have been a touchdown as well. Boy, that kid, he really came up and climbed the ladder to get that last touchdown.
Yeah, really, really happy for him. He was a kid at the start of the year. We were really looking for another receiver. And the first thing that jumped out at us right away the first couple of weeks of camp. Then we didn't know, that jump from playing freshman football to your sophomore year, and all right, now you're playing with the big boys. What impressed us so much right away was his blocking. He works very hard at his blocking, and he takes a lot of pride in it. That's how he got on the field right away. And then, now we've kind of seen that, hey, he's got the ability to, run good routes and catch the ball. He does have great hands. That tough one, I think he was just so wide open that he was almost a little bit surprised. And sometimes those are the toughest. But to his credit, he was able to bounce right back, and he made a big play. And we're really happy just with the growth that we've seen in him throughout this year. He's a very smart kid. He understands the soft spots of zones, and he's just got a great wiggle at the top of his routes, and he's really sure-handed too. So it's really good, especially at this point in the year, that we've got another guy that we found that we can count on. Really happy.
Well, I know Coach Colburn. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Coach.
Oh, I shouldn't say we're happy with him. More than anything, we're happy for him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's again, that's how we felt too. As you said, he was just too wide open the first time, but came up with that big catch. And I remember Coach Colburn actually talked to Nami as we were walking out of the stadium on Friday, and he said the kid could catch everything. Just mentioned his hands, talked about it quite frequently about Gross hands, and then turnover on downs a couple of times, and then the fumble by Alvarado at the very end of the game, which I know that should have sealed the deal at 3 minutes. I know you couldn't have been happy at that point, because that drive in particular could have ended the game, as opposed to 22-14 should have been 22-7.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. You would have liked to have run a little bit of time off the clock just to space things out a little bit, but it happens. And I thought we didn't handle it great, but we put ourselves in a good enough position that we were still able to win the game.
Yeah, for sure. And the defense came up and got, played well throughout that entire second half. Again, limiting Holmen. I think the biggest thing in the entire game was really field position, because you gave them the short field one time, and then in the second half, that last touchdown they got was another short field. They were already starting on your side. So field position played a huge proponent of that whole entire game.
Yeah, it did. And that's something that we always focus on, especially, during the Holmen week too. You want to make them drive the ball the length of the field, and you want to make them run, 12 to 15 plays in order to be able to score. You just hate giving up short fields to a team like that.
Well, 22-14, you guys get the win. Now you have to move on to Sparta. You've clinched the playoffs, but I know that that's not enough. Obviously you don't want to fall short in these next two games. So I'm sure that you and the coaching staff still has to put on the pressure to these boys and say, look, Nami and I have put it to the point where we felt like the team has relaxed a couple of times when they've had a lead. Now you can't relax just making the postseason. You want a much better seed than what you could be if you end up losing the next two.
Absolutely. Real quick before we look on to Sparta too much, I do want to give just a shout out to our defensive coaching staff. I thought that we had such a good plan going in, being able to go back and forth from different looks that gave them fits a little bit. Coach Lecheski did a great job relaying all that information in. Really happy with the position that he put ourselves in. Our defensive line and, Coach Heesh's guys played a great game. The Holmen coaches even remarked at that. He said, your guys up front are just so physical. And a lot of that is a credit to him. But then really a lot of the dirty work behind the scenes and the different looks that we were able to get into came from Coach Arnold, Michael Arnold. So he grew up playing and then coached in right out of high school a little bit, a powerhouse of Stillman Valley down in Illinois. So he knows, the triple option offense like the back of his hand. And, that really works to our advantage that, we've got him and he's a guru in it. So, just the things that we were able to do just from an alignment standpoint, and how disciplined the kids were. Really just came a lot from Coach Arnold, and he did such a tremendous job, and not a lot of people know that. So I want to make sure that, we give him his credit. So he earned himself a pride sticker this past week. We always give those to the kids after wins, but Coach Arnold got a pride sticker this week too.
I believe it because, and I'm sorry, I'm not an X and O's guy, but you did switch up your defense. You asked your defensive line to do some things that you don't particularly ask them to do because your normal situation and your normal setup is the 4 down lineman. You got a couple of defensive backs, and then all of a sudden you got, or 5 defensive backs and 2 linebackers this past week. All that defensive line ended up shifting over a little bit. Then you got a nose guard as opposed to defensive tackle, and all of a sudden now you got 5 down linemen. So I'm sure it played in the kids' heads that I have to play a little bit different assignment, certainly on that front line.
It is a little bit different, but we get lots of just repetitions in throughout the week of, when we see this is what we do. And as coaches, we put them in that position, but all the credit goes to the kids, that they were disciplined enough and could carry that out throughout the entire game. Because that's hard to do. One play goes wrong, and then your natural tendency is to do something different to try to fix that. And our kids didn't do that at all. Especially up front. All 5 of those D linemen and 6, 7 were playing during the game. They just played a heck of a game.
Well, let's move on to Sparta quickly, Coach. I do want to ask you a little bit about them. And, I've looked up a couple of things. I know that they had a couple of close losses and then some close wins, actually, to start the MVC, too, because they lost to Logan, but then turned around, got a 1-point win over Toma, a 7-point win over Reedsburg. And then lost the last 2, obviously the quadruple overtime with Holmen, and then they were shut out this past week by Onalaska. But I looked at their stats a little bit. Looks like their quarterback loves to run, and he throws the ball pretty well too.
Yeah, he's a big kid. He is one of the more just all around impressive athletes in the area. So, he looks like a college defensive end. But he moves, maybe I describe him. He's like the high school equivalent of Cam Newton, maybe. So he's a big kid. He's a load to bring down, really good athlete. He's got a big arm. And they lost him last year. He had a fairly significant knee injury. So it's good to see that he's back. I know that he's a really nice kid. A lot of kids on our team like him a lot and speak very highly of him. They're at a camp with him 2 summers ago. But offensively, it really all starts with him. He can beat you on the ground. He can beat you in the air. Sometimes it just looks like he's out there playing schoolyard football. But when you're that big and you're that talented, you can do that. So we'll have to come up with a way to try to keep him from doing too much.
Yeah, a little bit contained. How about on their defensive side, Coach?
Well, the same kid we just talked about is pretty good. So he plays D end for them. He doesn't come off the field too much. So he's a really good player. We'll do our best to be balanced. We'll see who we have back and healthy this week. But we're gonna have to spread the ball around a little bit and make sure that we give all of our guys that have shown their potential some chances to just keep doing that again next Friday night.
Well, how about keys then? I'm going to ask you that. That was coming.
All right. Try to change it up this week. Well, I think we probably have to make sure that the quarterback that also plays the end doesn't get rolling on either side of the ball. So he can completely change the game on both sides of the ball. So we'll have to pay extra special attention to him. So, keeping him out of the backfield is going to be really big for us having success on offense. And then defensively, we've got to mess with them a little bit. So we got to give them some different looks. We've got to be able to get some pressure to them. Then we just need to be really sound in the run game. They've got a good running back, number 33. Played really well against us last year as a sophomore. So we can't let him get rolling, but really we got to focus on taking away the quarterback this week.
And
And
then
then
the
after that,
turnovers.
Joel, we gotta make sure that we take care of the ball and turn them over.
Yeah, I knew that was coming too. Well, I love it. I have not heard yet if we're going to be there or not. We were there for boys soccer. The press box is new. There is some room up there, but also it might be awfully crowded because you would have your coaches and we might be in the same little room. So I'm not sure how we're going to handle that, if we're going to have to be outside or if we're just not going to be there. Not 100% sure on what's going to happen with that. Hopefully we'll get some clarification. We'll certainly update things. We have more things going on this week on the YouTube channel anyway for volleyball and stuff. So if you listen to those broadcasts, we'll certainly be passing along. So Coach Olson, thank you so much for joining me. Do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joel.
You bet. Mitch Olson with us, and I'm Joel McCall. Thank you so much for tuning in. As I mentioned, we do have volleyball on Tuesday at Toma. Thursday is at home against Holmen. Thank you so much for tuning in here on the Central Riverhawks YouTube channel.